Hi everyone. Today we're going to report translation and interpreting strategy. So there are difference between translation and interpreting. So later we will know the difference of the two by discussing this topic, translation and interpreting strategy, by me, Gerwins, and Christiana Botas. So what is translation? First, let us define what translation is. A translation is a written communication in a second language having the same meaning as a written communication in a first language. There are two translation strategies. So, a strategy used by professional translator for dealing with various type of text, especially for non-equivalent word term. So this is from Peter Newmark from 1998, a textbook of translation, New York, Prentice Hall. The first translation strategy is called the global translation strategy. So Chan, what is global translation strategy?
We will find it out, no? So, and its example of the global translations, no, we'll discuss that. So, it's the overall strategy you apply to a text as a whole. So, the primary choice you have to make is how close to the source text you want your target text to be. So, and local translation strategy is about procedure, no? Translation procedure. So here is the global translation strategy. So first is word for word translation.
So I guess there are four
Yeah.
translation strategies under global translation strategies. So what are these, Chan?
So first is the word for word translation. So it is preservation of word order and as literal translation as possible of individual words, including cultural words.
Can you give us an example
So
for word
example
for
for
word
this
translation?
word for word. So example, I am not selfish. So word for word. So ako,
Ako,
dili
dili,
dalo.
dalo. So from the word I'm, ako, not dili, selfish, dalo. So this is a translation from English to Bisaya.
Yes. As also you see in a sentence there are three words only, no? And same as in a translated text, there are only three words, no? I'm not selfish. Ako dili dalo in Bisaya.
So that's how you translate
in
in a word for word translation.
yes. So second is the literal translation. So apart from as literal as possible, translation of individual words, grammatical structures are converted into the nearest target language equivalents. So, example, literal translation. What do you
Literal.
think? Example
Literal
for this.
is near from a word for word
Mm.
translation, but there is like the meaning is um I mean the meaning of the words are more closer
Mm.
ang mas sabdanin mo yung context sa meaning sa word nga imong i-translate.
Yes. So,
Can you give us an example, Chan, so that we can
okay.
understand fully literal translation? What is literal translation?
Literal translation. So
Example.
this is I think this is the one of the hardest. So I don't have any words from Bisaya because literal here as you read, no, individual words. So meaning in the words in the context, eh, uh, the grammatical structure are converted into the nearest target language equivalent. So meaning what what is the function of the context or the words in the original text, the same function in translated text.
I guess the word for word translation, literal translation are kana the meaning is just as the same, almost the same.
Mm.
But the difference is kana um the grammatical structure are converted into nearest target language. For example, I will eat today. Ako, literal man.
Ako,
In Bisaya,
mukaon
ako
karon.
mukaon karon.
Mm.
Mag-same-same, maghapon siya.
Mura siya, mura siya same, mura word for word
Ako
siya, no?
mukaon karon. I
Literal.
will eat today. Ako mukaon karon. So, literal.
So,
Literal.
kung
jud
naay
kayo.
literal, sumura lang ni o ka na nasa symbolical. No?
Let's see.
Oh.
Let's see. Next slide. Sige, next.
Okay. So, next is the third strategy called the faithful translation. So, stays, if possible, with the constraints of the grammatical structures of the target text, but draws on certain contextual factors. So, what do you understand by
From
this?
the word
Draws
faithful,
in a certain.
may pang translation na ay faithful. So, faithful, meaning, kanang more focused,
Focus.
focused kayo siya sa certain contextual factors sa target language nga aton dapat i-reach.
So the difference, like before, what we have talked about is the literal and the words for words. So what I have noticed here is this faithful translation. What I understand is the context, translated context. In the previous strategy is the words, exactly the words that you're going to translate. But here is a context
The meaning of the words.
meaning of the context, the whole of the whole, what we call that, the whole matter. So mura og summarize nimo siya nga pag-translate. So
that's a good
contextual
observation,
factors.
Chan. You're so bright.
Chamba. Next is the semantic translation. So more emphasis on naturalness than in faithful translation and translation of certain cultural words into neutral equivalents in the target language. So what do you mean by this? So semantic, so meaning it's equivalent meaning of a certain words. Like for example, may ito sa Bisaya, lakaw. So in English, walk.
Sometimes na one
Meaning.
word sa English nga it has a lot of meaning.
Na siya meaning.
For example, what's the translation? Desire. In Bisaya, gusto.
Gusto. Na ay ano ba na?
Sometimes in the context, it depends on the context you are going to going to emphasize.
Yes.
So, for example, it was his desire to finish college. So, iyahaning gusto ng makahuman sa college. Iyahaning dagang term siya Bisaya.
Yes, daghan sa kuan.
Ang word ni desire, daghan siya. Pangandoy.
Pangandoy.
Yan na.
O kanang unsa pa na basta.
So that's semantic, like
yes.
the word
exactness
itself
of the meaning, no? The exactness, like unsa iyahang gamit diha ina, what is the use in that words in the sentence, the same, no? The same, the exact, the equivalence, no, of the meaning of the words. So more
it's how you use the words in a sentence.
That's how does translation strategy.
Semantic.
The word semantic, no? Next. So
Example,
we're supposed to give an example. So
Parang
it's already
nag-istorya.
given there.
But if you have your
Mm.
example, we're supposed to report this with you, but unfortunately.
Okay. Next, the adaptation uh, translation. So focus functional communication. So functional communication, it includes adaptation translation. So the freest form of translation and more of a target language culture based interpretation of the source text than a translation as such. This sometimes called document design.
I've noticed like most of the speakers are using adaptation translation.
So example, uh, here's the example, no? Cinderella, Cinderella story was adapted into Bawang Mira, Bawang Puti. No, the story was adapted by adjusting the cultural of the reader. So, if you already see or watch this movie, if you try to compare this both two scenarios, they are different. Uh, kana tawagan lang kanang in sa drama, different plot, different kuan anang basta situation, the same problem, no? But different version, no? As a version, Tagalog version. So nakakuha mo ani. So mo ba ni Cinderella nga nabilin nga sa na glass nga kuan?
Murag, wala
Oh,
nga
oh,
glass nga shoes.
glass nga siya. So is adapted, no? Adapted situational or the culture. So ano, basta mo to, no? Adaptation. Second is free translation. Oh, ikaw daw.
So we'll read free translation focuses on the content of the target text rather than the form, which means that the same content is expressed in the target text but with very different grammatical structures.
Hmm.
So it focuses on the content of the target text.
Okay.
So,
So,
murag
it's up the translator.
yeah, opinionated like how you understand
Yes.
understood the text. So, yeah.
So, third is the idiomatic translation. So, mix use of idioms and colloquialism that are not present in the source text.
This is sometimes so hard to understand. Like I have translated the first five
Mm.
poems that we had. Um, I have read a poem nga. Most of the poems uses idioms. So
Idioms.
idioms is not usually used sa ato ang culture.
Yes.
So this is more harder to translate.
Mm.
But it's a good translation if you know the context of the idiomatic expression.
I think this is also by culture, no?
Yeah, by culture.
How they use this by registered group
Mm.
of culture, no?
For example,
People.
this one. If you translate this, the rains like cats. The rain. It rains like cats and dogs. If you will translate this into word for word, the meaning is
Almost time, no?
yeah. That's right.
Okay, let's continue. Go ahead.
So if you will translate this, if you don't know idiomatic expression, colloquialism, so the meaning of the idiomatic expression will not make sense.
Mm.
It trains cat and dogs. How come? So this idiomatic translation is one of the
Kumbaga, it's implied another meaning.
yeah.
No? So, sama na siya. Four is communicative translation. Aims at producing the exact message of the source text content. Content-wise and content-wise and context-wise, but with emphasis on naturalness and acceptability, comprehensiveness to the target text readership. Example, I would admit that I am wrong. So communicative. So how can you translate this in our own language?